Sorry.
There we go. Things are sort of moving along. Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Welcome to our little virtual event space that we've got here. I am Allie. I'm sorry that I've got like a whole airline pilot thing going on, but you know, it is what it is this year, huh? I am so excited to be introducing Stephanie Thornton Plymale and Sydney Rogers tonight, here to discuss Stephanie's incredible memoir, American Daughter. So before we get on, oh, look, there it is. So before we get on to the fun stuff, I just want to really quickly thank you guys all so much for tuning in and for buying books. Your guys' support really is what keeps this place going, and we love what we do. So if you guys also love what we do, please do come in, grab copies, or you can totally order online. If you're not local, we do ship. Shipping is $3.50 per book, and then another $1 on top of that for every book that you order. And you know, you get to support USPS too, so it's like an added bonus. And we will be linking books in the chat. They'll be easy to find. So while you're over on the website, I definitely recommend signing up for our newsletter, checking out some of our other events. The newsletter is like a weekly update about events, exciting releases, anything happening in the bookstore that's coming up, just, you know, fun to keep on top of what's happening in our little book community. We do have book clubs, etc. It's fun. Trust me, it's a good call. It's only like a one email a week, so we're not gonna overload your email. So you know, we won't spam you. Otherwise, you can totally follow us on social media. We are at Third Place Books pretty much everywhere. For the quickest updates and recommendations as we head into 2021. So we're going to be here tonight for about an hour, and towards the end, we will be taking questions. So if you have questions, which we very, very much hope that you do, go ahead and leave those in the Q&A. It'll be, if you're on your computer, it'll be at the bottom. If you're on an iPad or phone, it'll be up at the top. There is also a chat box, which I see people are already starting to talk in. We love that. If you guys have thoughts, feelings, you know, anything that you come up with, if you want to connect with each other a little bit, if you want to, you know, say where you're from, shout out, whatever, we love it. Go ahead and hit up the chat box. But definitely Q&A in the Q&A box. That makes it so much easier once we get to the end when Q&A starts. And I think that is all of my housekeeping. So without further ado, Stephanie Thornton Plymale is CEO of Heritage School of Interior Design and the founder of the Heritage Home Foundation, a nonprofit serving families transitioning from homelessness. Her memoir, American Daughter, documents her complicated relationship with her mother and her changing perspective on the events of her youth as she's come to understand her mother's history. In conversation with her tonight is Sydney Rogers, who is an editor at Harper One, where she specializes in narrative and commercial nonfiction about transformation. So things like literary and celebrity memoir, self-help, health, and spirituality. She has worked on a numerous award-winning and New York Times, USA Today, and Wall Street Journal bestsellers. So thank you guys both so much for being here. I'm so excited to listen in on this conversation. If anybody needs anything, give me a shout, and that means the audience too, you know, in chat. I will be keeping an eye on everything going on. I'm going to just leave you guys in their capable hands. Don't forget to throw your questions in Q&A, and I will see you in like an hour.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Of course.
Well, hi guys. Hi party people, book buyers, readers, my favorite people of all time. Yeah, I'm Sydney. As Allie mentioned, I just want to say, first of all, thank you for being here. I'm so excited to talk to my author in this very intimate setting, Stephanie. And I'll be asking you all the juicy questions I didn't get to ask you while we were bringing the book together. So I hope you're looking forward to that. The gift of this book, this memoir, American Daughter, which I'm holding here, is that you could truly take a conversation, an hour-long conversation with Stephanie in about a million different directions. The book is impactful with every word. We could take this conversation down a million different roads, but since I'm the boss tonight, we're going to talk about craft, we're going to talk about memoir, we're going to talk about getting your story down on the page, and kind of where you are in your life now, which are all the things that I love to talk about, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you. So to kick things off, Steph, when did you have the idea, before you ever put pen to paper, when was your first moment where you thought, okay, I want to write a memoir, or I'm ready to start writing my story or telling my story?
So I think I've talked to you about this. I felt so, all of this was inside me, and it was all just a secret, and it was traumatic. And I had done a lot of work in my life in terms of therapy and trauma work. And what really happened, what really spearheaded this transformation where I was going to write my story was, it started in Vegas, actually. Shocking. So I was actually at a design conference with a bunch of my students, and we were all sitting around for dinner in Vegas. We had gone to the design show, and one of my students basically started asking me questions. Where were you raised? Where did you go to school? Who are your siblings? Where did you live? Who are your parents? They must be fabulous. And this went on, and I could not deflect. I couldn't do my usual thing. And basically I had a couple glasses of wine, and all of a sudden the dam broke, and everything started pouring out. And I started telling them about my mother's personalities and living on the beach and in foster care, and on and on and on, and what had happened to me. It was 2 hours later, and then we went to our hotel rooms, went to sleep, and I thought, oh my God, what did I do? Oh my God, the school's going to shut down. Nobody's going to want to come to my school anymore. Came back the next night, and everybody at the table said, that was the best night of our life. Can you continue, please? And it was the beginning. That was the beginning. And I thought it was so freeing to not live with this anymore, that's when I wanted to write my memoir. But what happened when I needed more information and my mother was diagnosed with cancer, American Daughter was born after that, which became an entirely different story.
Yeah. I've always wondered this. Did you have the intention truly of taking the, details of your past to your grave? I mean, your kids didn't know. Tell me a little bit about that. And then kind of, did you wake up in the middle of the night and think, about your past at all? How were you living with the truth of your past, but also denying it, almost to yourself and your life?
Well, first off, I wanted to protect my kids. It wasn't that, I didn't want them to know. I wanted to be their mother. I wanted to be the best mother I could be. I wanted to protect them from my past. And that's why telling them felt like it would harm them to know in a lot of ways. And I don't feel that way now at all. I wish I wasn't that way. It was just so closed off. Did I think yes, I did think I would go to my grave with this. I thought I had all this locked in. It was so far down. There was a box around it. There was another wall. There was some draperies over it. Like, it was so deep inside. It was layers and layers of the secrecy and shame that I felt. And I never thought I could live so just transformed like I am now. I'm so free and open. Doing this has just completely changed my life. I thought I was living a good life, but now that I'm kind of freed of that, and I'm open and I'm authentic, and so many people have received the book, it's a complete opposite of what I thought. And I really was living a difficult life. I cried a lot. I would cry from Friday till Monday. And it was exhausting. It was exhausting to cry that much. It was exhausting. So when people say, is it hard to share your story or do this? It's like, not compared to what I was living with, that kind of exhaustion.
And of course, that exhaustion of living with kind of a buried secret of your past, but also, the sheer hardship you endured in your life. And for the people who are listening who haven't read the memoir, you went through some serious, I don't know if I can cuss, but you went through some serious shit in your life. And sometimes the memoir American Daughter is difficult to read. I wanted to read for you, since we're talking honestly with each other, the passage, when this book came across my desk as an editor, I get manuscripts all the time, and there's, 99% of the time, sadly, I have to say no. But with all the books I end up acquiring, there's a moment where I realize like I'm 100% a yes, and there's no looking back. I'm definitely a yes. So I want to read that for you. Okay. It was a relief to see our mother each time she returned in her pale blue uniform dress, and to trail her to the neighborhood store. We never had more than a few dollars to spend on dinner for the 6 of us. My mother's scant pay had to cover diapers for the baby, the cost of washing our clothes at the laundromat, soap and shampoo, cigarettes by the carton, the little squares of paper she ate every morning, and the pungent green clusters of buds she called herbs. At the local grocery, we picked out random items: grapes or tangerines, carob bars, halva, dried slices of persimmon or papaya. Sometimes a kind cashier gave us hot water in cardboard cups. On these blessed evenings, we would divide the contents of a top ramen package among the cups and sit on the curb outside the store to eat it. That soup was the best dinner I'd ever had, the best dinner I could imagine having. Stop for a sec. Because it's not, and for everyone listening, the whole book is that good. But that was a moment where I could literally picture young Stephanie and that kind of innocence paired with that innocent worldview paired with the trauma that you were enduring that you hadn't realized was trauma. You weren't processing it as trauma. You were still, just an innocent child. Why did you choose, and for everyone, that passage is at an early part of the book, why did you choose to start your memoir at this time in your life when you were of this age in this place? And maybe you'll tell us a little bit about where you were at that time. And yeah.
Well, it's so interesting to me, and it is really powerful when you read it, but it's that time on the beach was one of the best times of my life. I was with my family. I was with my siblings still. And it obviously, I really liked hot ramen.
Really is the best.
I still do. I'm not going to lie. It's good. But I was with my family, and I it's so interesting to me because I didn't realize that we were like scavengers. I mean, I went to the bathroom outside for years. Like I just thought that was normal. And it honestly took me until I was an adult to realize, oh my God, that was not normal. Like people don't do that. We lived in the car. It was our home. Having a hot meal when you're freezing cold is so amazing. So if you've ever slept in a car with a one wool blanket and your siblings around you, it's freezing cold. I look at the homeless people on the street and I know the smell of living in a car. I know that feeling. So to me, that passage is beautiful. We ate together and had food. So in the back of that box, in our car, it's like we ate whatever was there. And sometimes there was peanut butter, or there was one piece of bread, or we had to share it. So to have a hot meal was really good.
Yeah. And, I guess the innocence is the thing that struck me. That's almost a reason why I thought you started there too. It's kind of what you're speaking to. You were almost innocent enough to just see this as your life, as kind of a, I wouldn't say happy, but maybe happy moment, innocent moment in your life. When you look back now as a mom, like, how do you feel about that time? And when you look back now and realize, and I'm sure there was a moment, and we'll get to this, when you realize your childhood was not normal, and that kind of innocent feeling, it probably clouds that innocent feeling. Talk to me a little bit about how you reckon with that.
My kids had an idyllic childhood because I always gave my kids the opposite of what I had, and I made sure that they had everything, almost too much. I went too far the other way to try to compensate and to make up for what I had. I have to say, writing the book, at times I'm still shocked at how we lived in that car. I'm still shocked about the fact that I got food. But the thing about me, I never complained.
Yeah.
This is just the way it was. I never asked for food. I waited. I followed my mom. I didn't, she was gone all day. We just fended for ourselves. I didn't know any different.
Yeah,
I just didn't know any different until for me, that time on the beach compared to when the motel, when we were all together and I was helping my mom, and in my mind, I was staging my first house. I was cleaning motels and I'm like, this is awesome. Like, I am making these rooms amazing for people. And that stuck with me. And I love staging to this day. But I was with my mom. It wasn't until I was taken away and all my siblings were taken away and we all went to the dependent unit where I was put in like a prison for children. And then suddenly this living on the beach was still good to me. That was horrible. And being separated from my siblings and being abused in my foster home and not being, that is where the trauma began. It really wasn't in that first chapter. That was
right.
So beautiful to me.
Yeah, I love that. So many memoirs kick the book off in that traumatic place. And I just love the way that this book starts, the way that it opens. It tonally is so special. It really captures this innocence, and I hope you got it from that passage. So this is a good time to talk about your mom.
Oh.
So your mom suffers, as readers will find out pretty early on, she suffers, and correct me if I'm wrong, from a kind of schizophrenic multiple personality disorder.
They call it dissociative disorder. She was schizophrenic and she was also bipolar. So she had several things going on.
And one of the distinguishing factors that the reader realizes early on that you divulge to us is that she kind of embodies at times these different personas. Mm-hmm. Talk to me a little bit about that, and let me and everyone listening in on kind of what your mom was like growing up when you realized what these personas were, and yeah, maybe what you think about it now that she's gone.
So as a child, I loved my mom. As an adult, I loved my mom. I loved my mom no matter what, and I longed for her, but you couldn't really ever have her. She was always addicted to drugs, always on drugs, always smoking, always on drugs. I didn't put her personalities together, honestly, as a young person, and that's hard for me now as an adult. I wish I did, because I didn't understand, because obviously now, after learning about her abduction and what happened to her, I realized where those personalities came from. But she had a little girl personality who was 10 or 11, coloring, crying, always pregnant, always telling me she was pregnant. And it was disturbing for me, especially as a younger person. I did not understand how this older person could think they were pregnant all the time. She had her other persona, which was dangerous, who was the criminal. So my mother has been in and out of psych wards, jails, at least or over 100 times that I found out of. So her persona Flo, she identified as an Indian, to dress as an Indian, and that was the persona where she would go out and do all of her crimes in, and that she was criminally insane. And so that's where she would be put into psych wards or jail when she was in that persona. And then there was my mother, who was incredibly sweet, shy, cute, little funny little laugh. There was 3 distinct people. Each person looked entirely different. They had 3 different looks to them. And so for me, trying to maneuver through those, I wanted my mom, just my mom. You know, I didn't want these other personalities. And so as a child, honestly, when I think back, I was very angry about it. I wanted her just to be this one person and not understanding. And it wasn't until I went through this process, through the interviews, through finding out what happened to her, that I was able to just really accept these people in her. And then what ended up happening through the process is by the time she died, she became one person. Those personas were not needed anymore because she was able to process, and she had love, and I was taking care of her, and, you know, she had what she needed. With mental illness, there's just so much these people are not getting. You know, our system is so broken. My mother never once had a counselor. She never had a therapist, if you can even believe that.
Wow.
So she just didn't get what she needed. But those personas were terrifying. Absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, I can imagine. And you kind of speak to her later in her life, before she died, kind of abandoning those personas, and you said she didn't need them anymore. I thought that was really interesting, and it actually, I think it's worth just speaking to what she endured. So she needed them throughout her life because when she was a child, she was abducted and abused. Do you want to tell that story, Steph?
Yeah. So, you know, she was 11 years old, and she was abducted with her cousin, and she was held captive for up to 10 days, and up to 17 men had raped, violated her as a child. After that happened, she went into a home for girls, which is what they did back then. If you were raped or anything, then you were the bad person. And so she was told she was the bad person. She went into the home where she was pregnant, obviously, from all of that and all that stuff that happened. And she was put into a home, and she was never had her life again after that. That's the hardest part about this book. Well, there's several hard things, but
Yeah.
it is really hard to wrap your mind around. As I have a daughter, I had an 11-year-old daughter when I was writing the book. She was younger, and I just can't imagine. And I suffered too in my foster home with abuse as well. But they're just two different kinds of trauma that we both went through.
And it's amazing though, when to hear about your mom's trauma serves in the book as both this unfathomable truth. I mean, and in the book, it tells in real time as you're kind of researching this and the facts are unfolding, and it is unfathomable. It's unfathomable for you as you're writing. It's unfathomable for the reader as they're reading. But once it becomes conclusive that your mom went through this, it serves another purpose, which is it explains things. It explains those personalities. It offers a redemption for your mom. And I loved Book Page's review of the book, which gave you a starred review, said that this book will recalibrate how you feel about villains and victims. And I thought that was so spot on, because that's really what the truth and discovering the truth of what your mom went through, intergenerational trauma, what that means. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that's really interesting because once I found out about, you know, what happened to my mom, that was it. I really, really wanted my mom to take accountability for the things that she had done to her children, to the world. I mean, it wasn't just me. The world, my mom wreaked havoc on this world. But you don't go to jail or psych wards over 100 times without doing a lot. You know, psych wards are not like yoga centers. I mean, these are, most people I know have never been to one, and it's you read about it in my book. And so, you know, she did a lot of harm, but once I found out what happened to her, it all made sense. And that idea that I was going to hold her accountable was gone.
Yeah.
Because now it was about acceptance, and it was about us coming together, accepting each other. And, you know, it was hard for her to love me. It's, you know, my mom was a sociopath. There's just no way around it. But as she worked through her trauma and through those interviews, she was connected to her heart in a way. She would tell me she loved me. She did say things to me, and some people would say it's the cancer in her brain, but I don't think it was. I think she had healed. It took her a lifetime to heal.
Yeah.
So I don't hold her responsible anymore. I hold what happened to her responsible, and the systems that are so broken that didn't actually give her the help she needed at the time. You know, and me being by her side, just telling her, I will never leave you. I will never abandon you. And I didn't. I stayed with her all the way to the end. And that just made an incredible difference.
Yep. And that's such a beautiful message, I think. And it's one of the reasons, just to kind of like bookend the way the book functions. I brought up the beginning where you open with this kind of innocent voice, and by the end there's almost an innocent quality to your voice again, because it's as if you're rethinking your life. Who was right, who was wrong, who did things to you, who had things done to them. And what a beautiful gift I felt at the end of reading, to be able to look at my life that way. And I know that you've heard from readers of the book that they feel that too. Tell me a little bit about kind of what you hear most from readers, and how the book kind of translates from the page to their lives.
Well, it's the most shocking thing in the world to me, honestly. I never thought with my story, it's nuts. I don't even know how to say it, but it's just so.
It's one of a kind. One of a kind.
One of a kind. It really is. So to have people reach out and say, I connected to this book in a way I can't even believe it. I mean, over and over, whether it's me being a fraud, or feeling like a fraud, or whether they have a mentally ill person, or they've dealt with suicide, or everybody has a story. And I think American Daughter has everything it has something for everyone.
Yeah.
And I didn't set out to have this be this book that was for everyone, but it is. And that's why it's just such an American story.
Yeah.
It just touches people's lives, because we all have a story. We all have a past. And for some reason, American Daughter touches people in that way.
I just have to ask, as your editor, is there anything you left out of this book? Is there any secret in there that I don't know about yet? Or did you like?
I never told you about Vegas. This is the first time I've talked about Vegas. It all happens in Vegas. It was supposed to stay in Vegas, and it didn't.
No. Well, everyone at Third Place Books knows about it.
To be honest, Sydney, I could write another book. Mm-hmm. I gave this book what this book needed. The amount of chaos and the amount that I lived through. You don't want to sicken people with sadness and tragedy. This book gives enough, and it's also very hopeful and beautiful. And so I felt that I held back in this book, and people have said, wow, you really laid it out there. And I say, I didn't. I really held back to make this a really wonderful experience for people that, you know, sometimes memoirs for me sometimes they can get we just didn't need all that, you know, but I felt like I just gave what the book needed.
I agree. I'm glad to hear there are more books in there too.
There's another book coming.
Good. Yes, you heard it here first. Okay, so I want to switch gears a little bit. We've talked a lot about some of the sad parts of your story, but I want to talk about one of my favorite characters in the book. His name is Jim.
Aww.
So one theme of this book is the act of keeping secrets, which we've talked about earlier. Most notably, the one you kept all your life, the story of your past. But there is one person you told early on in the book, and that's Jim. And I want to read that passage if you're up for it.
Yeah. I love it.
Okay. For the first time in my life, I told my story to another person. I told it to Jim. I told him a lot of other things too. I told him about the stepfather who drifted in and out of our lives between prison stints, other lovers, and criminal enterprises of all kinds, about the parade of drug-addled, lawless, and marginal men my mother brought home in relentless succession, about the cast of characters that inhabited my mother and never knowing which of them I'd be dealing with on any given day, about living in our car and the long, aimless days of wandering the beach and eating nothing but seaweed. I told him about living in the dependent unit of the state of California with all my belongings in a trash bag, not knowing where my brothers were or whether I would see them again or where the screams were coming from in the night. I told him about the foster homes where I was violated on a nightly basis, about the vision issues I had as a child that were never addressed by an adult, therefore never treated by a doctor, and ultimately led to blindness in one of my eyes. I told him about the hunger and the cold and the homelessness and the loneliness and the chaos and the drugs and the confusion and the abuse. I told him everything. And with every word I spoke, I felt the weight of isolation being lifted from me, almost as if a heavy animal hide were being tugged from my shoulders. It felt as if I could draw a deep breath for the first time. And I love that passage, not only because Jim becomes for the reader and for you this very safe place to be, but it's also that passage mimics the act of writing itself, the act of writing a memoir, that deep exhale when you have truth that you're putting down on the page. And we've talked about it a little bit, but how did you feel in that moment telling Jim, who you couldn't have guessed then would go on to be your lifelong partner? And then how do you feel now putting that truth on that one safe person has become the whole world now that the book is out, and you can exhale in that way?
Well, I think by telling him, first off, I'd never experienced love until I met Jim. And he, for whatever reason, has been devoted to me since the minute he met me. He really wasn't like that before with other girls at all. And so he was just so like every time I turned around, like there he was, he just loved me. And I never had experienced that before. And I just felt that I could open up to him, and it was hard on him. And he's told me now as an adult, that was really hard for me. He had talked to his parents about it because he didn't really know how to process it. He was just a kid.
Yeah.
And, but I think by telling him and opening up, I think Jim's spirit is so sweet and kind. He wanted to take care of me. So it kind of served to help him, inviting him in, and then also giving him this place of helping and serving and protecting me, which is something he's always done, sometimes too much, but I think that is kind of what happened. And he's been by my side ever since. So it's been since I was 15 and now I'm 54. Yikes. And, we've obviously had our ups and downs, and there's parts of the book and the story where I start to want to, I want to feel normal, partially because I fell in love so young. I never had normal experiences. I kind of envied people who were like online dating. It sounded so
no.
So fun. It just looked wonderful. And anyway, so this situation happened where I started to have feelings for somebody else. And that is definitely the hardest. But really what that was is that I wanted to experience something that most people had experienced, something normal. But then obviously I made the right decision. And but I was very thankful, honestly, that I got to have that opportunity to explore a little bit of what normal, like I don't say normal, I just didn't have a normal life, and I didn't have those normal experiences that I longed for. And mainly also with Owen, I really was just most in love with his mother.
Yeah. Oh,
I was really after his mother.
Yes.
Mother.
The reader can tell. I haven't told you this, but both of my parents have read the book, read American Daughter. They both love it. And they said the same thing about your brief relationship with Owen. They were like, we think she likes his mom a lot.
It was really the attraction of his mother.
Yes.
You know, I longed for a mother figure, and I have talked to other people who really relate to that in the book, who don't have a strong mother figure. That's what they relate to. I was always looking at what other people had. And a lot of times I turn the conversation, I want to hear about your family because I longed for that. And so that's kind of what that relationship was all about. But that you definitely want to read about, because that's a pretty well, that's some people's favorite part of the book.
Yeah. Well, yeah, makes sense. So, you know, the second part of that question, the act of writing and the kind of deep exhale of sharing your story with Jim, now the deep exhale of sharing your story with the world. We talked about it earlier, but the idea of secrets, it's such a potent part of this story. It's the kind of thing that Glass Castle educated, which American Daughter continually is compared to and held up next to, which is fantastic. It's a huge part of those, what makes those stories so special. And I think it's because people everywhere keep secrets of their past. There is a shame and an inability even to kind of comprehend or understand the difference between who you were then and who you are now, and the many circumstances that shape you. How does that make you feel?
Well, I lived with a lot of secrets. I mean, how do you tell, you know, even from my brother being kidnapped, I could never tell anybody that, oh, my brother was kidnapped. Whoa. You know, and that's just one of many things that had happened in my life. So I had all these secrets, and honestly, for me, it's just purging of shame. I mean, my shame is gone.
Ugh.
I lived with shame is so powerful. If anybody hasn't really experienced that in their life, I'm thankful for you. That's wonderful. But shame is so powerful, so limiting. And so that's why sharing my story is so important. And also I feel inspired that I believe that people are living with this. And I hope that American Daughter helps them to share their story in some way. It doesn't need to be a book. It could be a blog. It could be a best friend. It could be a therapist. Share your story, get it out. It's just so powerful. I mean, I'm living a full life. I'm an integrated person. If you met me 10 years ago, I wouldn't have been the person that I am today.
Yep.
From doing this. It's just powerful. I recommend it for everybody.
So important. And it's one of the things that makes, I felt viscerally as I was reading, like I could feel you, you know, getting rid of that shame, just owning every word of your story, confident, with a lot of conviction. And that's one of the most powerful parts. I know why people can see themselves in their own stories in your story, which is, as we said, one of a kind. And that's because you write with such a commitment to telling the truth, to getting it out, to speaking for, you know, yourself, but also others who've been through what you've been through. So I want to get to the great twist of the book. There are many surprising turns throughout the memoir, but the great twist of the book is that despite growing up the way you did, and I can, you know, point to other things that we haven't mentioned, like you not knowing who your father was. We talk about abuse, but the incredible poverty that you grew up in, neglect. There's one of the most harrowing scenes in the book is when you have a rash on your body. And I encourage everyone to read the book. Yeah, I don't even want to go there. But despite all of that, you find out that as you're investigating your mom and learning of the abuse and the abduction that happened to her, you discover where she's from and who her parents are. And you learn that you are a direct descendant of our founding father, George Washington, which is a massive spoiler for the reader, but also for you in your life. We talked a lot about this as we were nearing sending the final pages to the printer. And it was interesting because the conversations we had, your feeling about it then when you found out, your feeling about it now. I'm just curious to know, first, how it felt to learn that truth of your ancestry, and then second, how you feel about the truth today.
Well, I lived my entire life not knowing a single cousin, a grandparent. I didn't know their names. I was like this empty person with no history, nothing. Even my daughter who's adopted, we still know about her family. We still know. I knew nothing, nobody, never had any family. So suddenly I find out I have what my mom has held from me. And, she's likened she's told me that I was from rape from the earliest years. This was the hardest thing for me to forgive her on, is that she's told me from the minute I was 3 years old, 4 years old, you're from rape. You don't have this. This is not your father. It's just always alienating me. It alienated me from everything. I shouldn't even be here. I shouldn't exist. I'm from something so horrible. So suddenly I'm actually the granddaughter of Elizabeth Betty Washington, who's our, founding father's sister. And I have this illustrious, amazing family who are educators, and they are, the professors of Johns Hopkins University and the founders of the University of Virginia. And here I am. I started these design schools out of nothing. I started colleges out of nothing, not knowing I had any connection to these amazing educators and founders. So I can't even express how unbelievable that was. And I also have felt like so many of my grandparents have been with me, and I feel their presence with me now. But like we talked about during the writing and the editing process with you, is that I felt a lot of shame too, because so many of them were plantation owners and slave owners. And I wanted nothing to do with building anything on the backs of anybody, because I have built my career on the success of others. I created schools that empower people to have careers that they love, and to build people up. That's what I love doing. So that was really hard for me. So there's pride and there's disgust, and they live in this space, but they're my family, and every family has that. And you can't throw it all out. And so I'm taking the good out of this. And I really do feel like a lot of my ancestors have been with me and guiding me. Because how did I start these schools called Heritage? It was called Heritage before I even got it. And then I was like, I want the school because I've never had a heritage. So I'm going to buy this school and I'm going to make it amazing.
One of my favorite parts of the book is when you're realizing what some of your ancestors did and what they accomplished and where they went to school, and you're recognizing traits in them that are also in you. It's so satisfying. It's of course, we each are born with our own. We can do anything. I firmly believe that any person can go on and do anything. It doesn't matter if your mom, was in and out of psych wards, you can accomplish anything. And I think at the outset, of course, that's what your book, it propels that message forward. But there's such a satisfaction in knowing that you come from this line of very accomplished people. It almost gives you this sense of conviction, confidence in everything that you've done. So, yeah.
I also feel this really strong, wonderful, miraculous sense that I kind of ended up right where my grandparents would have wanted me without even knowing. They would have loved to see that their granddaughter went on to start schools, and that their name, the Thorntons, is on another book. After years of books that they wrote, now actually the most interesting book Thornton has written is my book, because a lot of their books are like chemistry books and they're super boring. So this is like a really good book.
You're gonna read one Thornton book, it's this one.
This is the best Thornton book. But I feel so great about that. Like, I feel like I never had I never had anybody proud of me. I was always a nobody and a nothing, and nobody cared when I graduated. Nobody was there. There was no birthday presents, or it was just, I did what I did. And then now they're so proud of me. I just know it. I just feel it. Like I'm the apple of their eye. If nobody had abducted my mom might have gone on to be a doctor too. And my mom might have been an educator as well. We don't know, but that I was able to pick that up. And it dawned on me today, Sydney, that intergenerational trauma of my family, it's not there anymore.
Yeah.
Like my daughter and I were beautiful together. You know, it's that whole cycle is now broken.
Yep.
That dawned on me today, and I just thought that was wonderful.
Well, I think it's the New York Times said it best when they said, the New York Times Book Review said, Plymale's lineage, which she traces back to the Revolutionary War, represents a sort of inverse American dream. Her people become less respectable through the generations until the line arrives at Plymale herself, whose own life marks the point where the needle begins to move in a positive direction once again. It's a story of redemption and forgiveness.
Biggest compliment ever.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I cried about that for weeks. That was so beautiful. I'm so
and we talked a lot after that came in about how that almost speaks to the point about George Washington, about coming from George Washington, being, you know, a descendant of George Washington, is that it's almost like your past is your past for all of us, for everyone. Your past is your past until it comes to you. And then, you know, it's kind of, you're either going to set your past on a continued upward trajectory, or you're not going to. And I think that gives a lot of personal empowerment to people as well. And, you know, I mentioned this before, but it's one of my favorite things about the book is that for the majority of the book, we believe that you know, have no family, you have no ancestry, you are that kind of, that, you know, almost sad story. And yeah, so that's just one of my favorite parts about the book. And of course, the New York Times Book Review is one of my favorite things. And I know that we are running late, so it's 10:48. For anyone who has questions, now is a good time to put those in the chat, the Q&A chat. But if you don't have questions, I have more, so I can keep going. So the core of this book, at its core, and this is something I've been dying to talk to you about, is really a book about place. You go from place to place in the book. Of course, there are times when you don't have a home, you're homeless. So then you go on to start a series of companies that are all dedicated to the home, the place, the space. So talk to me about that for you, and kind of what place represents for you.
Well, I mean, home for me, from the time I saw the bus and saw this transformed space of a transformation in an actual home, from the time I was in a motel and I felt a sense of like comfort for the first time, that has been just etched in me. That never went away. And I then became an interior designer in my 20s, and I served hundreds of clients, giving them beautiful homes. Then I was ready for something new, and I started these schools that then became this amazing place for people to get this career, and then also create homes and beautiful spaces for thousands, and it's going to be millions of people. And it just all comes from this longing for home, longing for it's never stops with me, Sydney. You know, I don't know if you follow me on Instagram. I do. Obsessed with it. I love home and warmth and textures and creating home and just having this space that's just like a little slice of heaven. I just want everybody to have that. It's just
Yeah.
so important. And so I don't take home for granted. Like when I go home, I light all the candles. Home is so special to me. I don't take a single day for granted in my home.
Yep. Yes, there are these gorgeous parts of the book, scenes of the book where you are, working on your home. You're redoing things, reupholstering, and it's kind of a manic moment of the book. You're going through a lot, but it's an important moment for the reader because they come to realize that your physical surroundings, the physical surroundings for Stephanie, are either something she's building. I'm saying she, but it's you. Something she's building to kind of ease the tension of her mind, or whatever's happening, the space around you becomes a physical manifestation of something that's not physical, that's emotional or psychological for you. So would you speak to that a little bit?
Well, honestly, let's say I was nuts. Okay. I mean, I think
one of a kind.
it was unhealthy. So here's the thing with me now. Creating home and a sense of home is a healthy, wonderful thing for me now. There was times in my life when it was just another one of my shield. It was one of my addictions. It was like, I have to create this. I have to, I had so many layers of my facade going on too. And so this wasn't a joyful, wonderful thing that I have now in my life. It was in so many ways, it had become my drug, my addiction, and it was expensive and it was really gnawing at my family. It wasn't healthy. Yeah. Whereas today, as a free person who isn't living with all this trauma and pain inside and trying to cover it up, it's now just back to being part of a wonderful expression of home and space and design. So I definitely used it as, in some ways, my own drug, I would say.
Yep.
An obsession.
Yes. I think a lot of women out there viewing right now and reading this book can agree with that and concur.
They can relate to that in their own way.
Yes. So we have a question from Jill. She says, Stephanie, are you working on anything else? I can't wait to read your book.
I am. I've got a podcast coming out in spring. I'm working with the most amazing producer, and the podcast is called Overcoming. And I'm going to be talking with men and women. We haven't decided if we're having men, but I'd like to. And it's going to be extraordinary stories of extraordinary people who've overcome, and we're going to share their journey of their story, and it's unbelievable and beautiful and intense. So I'm so excited about that. And I am going to be. I'm also working on my next book, which is titled Overcoming. At this point, is what it's called. So yes. I'm always doing lots of things. I'm having plans to start 2 more schools. I want to have 6 schools before I die, not right now.
When does your podcast come out?
Well, that's coming out in the spring.
Okay. Amazing. So if we don't have any more questions, I have one more question for you, and that is about the amazing audiobook. And I encourage everyone here who buys the hardcover to also buy the audiobook, because it's really an experience of its own. And that was something me and Stephanie's agent, Emma, we talked a lot about when we first got together as a team. Because of course, as mentioned, Stephanie's mom has these multiple personalities that she embodies in the book. There are a lot of characters. There's a lot to take on as a narrator. So Stephanie, talk to me a little bit about what you love about the audiobook, how it came together, what you were trying to troubleshoot from the beginning.
The audiobook, first off, I want to say that Sydney did an amazing job as an editor. When I brought American Daughter to HarperCollins, it had bruises and warts and it needed some love. And Sydney did an amazing job. It's flawless. It is flawless. and how I know that for sure is the audiobook is phenomenal. And I'm not just saying that. I mean it. I've never been so hooked on a book and beautifully read as Mojan has done. It's breathtaking. People who are starting to read it or listen to it they're taking it in one sitting. They can't leave it. They're late for work. I'm getting messages like, I can't go to work. I can't function. I got to finish this book. So it's so spectacular. She did such an amazing job. It feels, it's so authentic. And she did express how much she loved American Daughter and how much she connected to the book and the story personally. And you see that in her reading.
Absolutely. And oh gosh, I always pronounce her name wrong. Mojan. And for everyone who doesn't know, she's an actress who has been on House of Cards, The Blacklist, The Mentalist, The Affair. She's you will recognize her face, and she's brilliant. She's one of my favorite audiobook narrators of all time. And I knew I had to have her for American Daughter. So I'm so glad that worked out. And yeah, I think we're almost at time. Are there any other questions from the group?
They're quiet out there.
They are quiet tonight. If not, Steph, is there anything else you want to say to potential readers and the good people of Third Place? There's Allie.
Oh, just thank you, Third Place. You guys are so awesome. And thank you for having me. And Sydney, thank you for all your wonderful questions. And I'm looking forward to people reading the book. And I really love hearing how it's impacted you. And you can follow me on social media, on Facebook, Instagram. And I love hearing from everybody.
American Daughter.
Yes. I cannot wait to start putting this in book club's hands. I think people are going to really, really love this one.
Allie, let us know what you think when you finish.
I will. I absolutely will. I'll hit you up on Instagram. Thank you guys both so much for being here. This has been such a wonderful conversation. I've been unable to do anything else. I'm exclusively listening over here. Audience, thank you guys so much for coming out. We love having you here, and we will see you all soon. Thank you all so much.
Yay.
Bye.
Thank you, Sydney.
Stephanie, love you.
Love you. Thank you so much.